How are you, ladies and gentlemen? Did you miss us? It's Gridiron 360. I got Dapper Dave sitting across the way, trying to rock the Movember. I'm Bill. I'll be your host on this journey into NFL Week 11 recap. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run through 3 games of this past weekend we want to talk about. Maybe 3 we'll touch on as honorable mention. And if it gets too long, we'll cut this up and we'll throw out another one right after this. So keep your eye out with our good, the bad, and the ugly segment, all encompassing the recap from NFL Week 11. And then if we have time today, we'll start racking on some preview of NFL Week 12 in terms of the most notable games to watch. And then dive into a little bit of the playoff picture as, it's coming. How do we get this far? Fortunately, I think it's December, 14th or something like that is the first early national signing period for college. So even though we're coming to a close, we're going to bring some fun stuff in terms of recruiting for college, NFL draft stuff. It'll be nice. So let's get rocking and rolling, shall we? The first game we want to touch on was Thursday Night Football from last week, where the Pittsburgh Steelers, sitting at 5, what were they? 4 and 5. No, 5 and 4. 5 and 4. 5 and 4. Obviously, we saw what the Ravens did, and we'll talk more about them as that is one of our games, the Texans-Ravens. But in that division, they're way ahead. But still a chance for the Steelers to make up some ground. Still a chance for the Steelers to maybe sneak into a wild card bid. And a few weeks ago, you wouldn't have said that, but we had talked about it. They need to turn it on now, especially on defense, and they had. And limping into this is the Cleveland Browns getting a game Thursday night at home, sitting at, they were at, 3 and 6. That's what they were at. Now, it is a divisional game. All the high hopes for Cleveland this year. It wasn't fantastic, but they got the win in this one, stopping that Pittsburgh Steeler win streak and dropping them to 5 and 5. The Browns moving themselves to 4 and 6. Final score: Cleveland Browns 21. Pittsburgh Steelers 7. Dave, go.
All right. Well, here was the thing for the Steelers. Steelers were certainly the team worth talking about coming into this game. Just again, because you mentioned, we've talked about it several times, and looking at their schedule. When they were sitting at 2 and 4, they had the Miami Dolphins, needed to win that game, didn't start out very well, came back, got it going, and won that game. And it was really, and I had said their next 2 games were critical. They took on the Colts, and then they had the Rams, and then beyond that, their schedule softened up quite a bit. Steelers did their part coming into this week by taking care of those last 2 games and winning, battling through. The MO we saw from this team was a resurgence of their defense. Certainly from a timing perspective was when Minkah Fitzpatrick got traded, and I'll admit I questioned that trade. It didn't make a lot of sense with the offensive issues they had. But it's actually turned out really well for them, and he's made a huge difference.
He's had, I think, in the last 4 games, 4 picks and
three pick sixes.
3 pick sixes, something like that.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, so, this game was kind of ready-made for them. Cleveland has continued to be a disaster. Looked a little bit better the previous week. One of the things I liked with Kareem Hunt coming back, the thought of, Nick Chubb having such a strong season.
Glad you're talking about this. They beat the Bills at home, and the Bills are a good team.
Yeah, coming back on them, came back on them, and but they stuck to the ground. Had a very heavy ground emphasis. A lot of sets with both running backs in the backfield. You saw Lamar Hunt, that's the owner, Kareem Hunt. You saw him actually doing a lot of pass catching, but what was interesting in those is he did a very good job lead blocking.
Yes, he did for Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb. So kind of an interesting little setup. But coming into this game again, this is where Pittsburgh just needed to take care of business and be the team they had appeared to be over the last few weeks. Play good defense and run the ball. Game started ugly. They couldn't run the ball very well. James Conner was back, but not long into that game. I think he had 5 carries before he went out only for 10 yards and stung his shoulder again, and now so he was out. And they could get absolutely nothing going on the ground against this team. The Cleveland defense played fantastic in this game, probably for about 59 minutes and about 31 seconds or something like that.
Yep.
Played a great
and
game.
You know why.
And had them. I mean, this should have been, I won't call it a signature win. This team is, Cleveland, no matter how they finish, I think is still a disappointment this year, just given the talent they've got, but certainly need to figure out how to right the ship. I mean, all things being said, I mean, Cleveland didn't do anything that spectacular offensively. Nick Chubb had a solid day, not spectacular. He had 27 rushes for 92 yards, so under 3.5 yards a carry.
Didn't see the end zone.
No. Kareem Hunt, same, was actually less effective at 6 carries for 12 yards.
And it seemed like in week 10 when they played the Bills and Kareem Hunt came back, he had 4 carries for 30 yards, 7 receptions for 44 yards. And this is Thursday Night Football, so it's prime time. Everybody's watching. And especially out the gate, because he went in this game against the Steelers 6 for 12, so he did have a couple more carries, but less effective. But 1 less reception and 2 more yards, 6 for 46. Neither time seeing the end zone. But out the gate in Thursday Night Football, it seemed like they were getting more and more infatuated with their new toy in Kareem Hunt in terms of the offense and the coordinator and even Kitchens as they went. And they were using him, and he was effective, and then that kind of dissipated. And, I mean, like, really, the second half was pretty slow. I mean, the whole game was slow. It was Thursday Night Football. It's just what we always think, you know? I mean, it was a touchdown a quarter. 1 in the first by Cleveland, 1 in the second by Cleveland, 1 in the third by Pittsburgh, 1 in the fourth by Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, really, in reality, if you look at it, I mean, this game there was 2 issues in this game for Pittsburgh that just slap you in the face, and it was 4 sacks on Mason Rudolph. He was under siege for a good portion of the game, but then on top of that led him into 4 picks. So I mean, in reality, a Cleveland team with this much talent really should have dismantled Pittsburgh with that kind of stat line, as Pittsburgh had no turnovers and only had 1 sack in the game. But their defense, you know, I think played admirably given the situations they were put in as far as Pittsburgh is concerned. But this really, if anybody was the star of the show in a good way, it was the Browns defense. And the Browns defense was also the star of the show in a not so good way.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, Mason Rudolph has been okay. Nothing great, but it was bad this game. I mean, he was 23 for 44, 221, 1 TD, 4 picks. That's going to kill you, especially in the NFL.
Well, listen, let's be honest. The only reason the Pittsburgh Steelers turned this season around going into this game was the fact that they were able to rely on their running game, which has had a lot of injuries, but the next man up is really produced for them. And in this game, there was almost no support as far as running is concerned. I mean, Jalen Samuels was only 5 of 26 for 5 yards per carry, which was solid, but then second is Rudolph with 15 yards on 2 carries. Edmonds, and then we already talked about Connor. It was a mess. So him trying to, you know, Pittsburgh throwing the ball 44 times with this quarterback is not the recipe to win. But then again, at the same time, you cannot be turning the ball over like that. So this, you know.
So who's up next again? Who was in that third team? Because you know, I don't have the depth chart. I don't have the depth chart in front of me because Rudolph. You know, is he? You know, I don't know if they're going to hold him out. I don't know if they're suspended. Did he get suspended?
No, he was clear. The only suspensions were to obviously Myles Garrett
and Pouncey,
and then the other guy,
Oogie Boogie.
I got to admit, his suspension, I think why he got suspended was because he pushed Rudolph without a helmet on. It was a little ticky tacky.
And I understand the Pouncey suspend. Well, look, we'll get into that.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is part of
part of
our
our-
good, the bad, and the ugly. So we
Yeah.
all know that the game ended. This is why we're talking. And if you don't, with the ugly fight and Rudolph getting sacked and getting landed on by Oogie Boogie, and then Myles Garrett pulling a helmet off and all that. And we're going to talk about that as a part of our good, the bad, and the ugly. But that's why Dave alluded to it was good. The game was fine until about 59-31. But yeah, so there's the next quarterback up. I see Paxton Lynch on the.
He's going to play. No, Rudolph's still playing.
Oh, he is. Oh, yeah. That's right. And then you saw Juju take an ugly hit, which he came out for a potential concussion because he was woozy, and now come to find out, is it a knee too? He's got another injury involved there, so he'll be gone. You got Connor gone. You got the rookie receiver Deontay Johnson, I think, is also going to be out. So your lead receiver now becomes James Washington, I guess. And yeah, so it's going to get a little nutty. Hey, Vance McDonald might be a good play this weekend in fantasy for a tight end, because he's going to be one of the more veteran options. Look, and from the Cleveland side of the ball, you said it. It really wasn't anything spectacular. Baker 17-32, 193, 2 TDs. He did run one in on top of that. Odell Beckham was 4 for 60. Jarvis 4 for 43. Nothing like bam.
Yep.
So I don't think they're really going anywhere either. But that's our first game that we wanted to talk about, because
I will say
there were a lot of different things that happened there.
These two teams play each other again the week after this. But I will say this is pretty much Pittsburgh, certainly with where their schedule's at right now, still has an outside shot. This would have probably put them in a front row position for a wild card. Their two remaining games where they may not be favored are against Buffalo in Week 15, and then Week 17 they get the Ravens. But other than that, they got the Cardinals, they got the Cincinnati Bengals, they have obviously the Browns. So these are games, they're still winnable, but they've made their life a hell of a lot harder now losing this game. Cleveland's, again, still a game back from Pittsburgh, who's made their life harder, is really, really on the cusp of falling out of this thing, though their schedule is set up pretty favorably, too, as well.
Back in, and
their schedule's kind of weak. They got Baltimore still to play, which will be tough.
And we'll talk about, like I said, for the preview for next week, we're going to start to just touch on the games, but also start to talk playoffs, because the picture is shaping up. There's not a lot of time left. You see teams at the top, and then there's a few teams in the middle, even, second and third in their division, that could potentially make a move if things fall the right way and they do well. So next game was really one we talked up in terms of, I don't think we did a preview last week. Sorry. In terms of a big matchup, you have
MVP candidates.
Yeah, MVP. You have the 6-3 Houston Texans leading the AFC South, traveling to Baltimore, who was sitting at 7-2. And they're leading the AFC North. Obviously, the only team to beat the Patriots and the Ravens. And, it was a game of epic proportions with two quarterbacks that their competitive head-to-head nature between the two of them specifically runs deep. I mean, it goes back to college. You all know I'm a Clemson guy. I was at the game when Lamar Jackson came to town. I think they were 5 or something. We were 3. Might have been the other way around. And got to witness it firsthand that night in Death Valley. Look, in college, Deshaun Watson was not a guy that necessarily got crazy, maybe to the point where you might think he's a little bit arrogant or cocky or anything like that. But I remember that game running down the hill. He came running down the hill and continued running around the perimeter of the inside of the sidelines, throwing his hands up and down, air, jumping up and down, throwing his hands at the side, like you're trying to get the crowd up, like, let's go. He knew it was a big matchup. Okay, like he knew this was head to head, I mean, it was a big one. And it led us right on into getting back into the playoffs, or getting what was that? Yeah, that was 17, I think. So, in comes Lamar Jackson. And keep in mind that year, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy. There was a lot of debate about that because a lot of votes came in before the postseason. And we won the national championship that year. And Lamar Jackson, went on to not do so great the rest of the year. And Deshaun looked like the guy, not Lamar, even though that they were, he was in New York. We won the game that night. We go on to win the national title. He goes on. Lamar goes on to win the Heisman. Next year, they get drafted. First quarterback off the board, Mitch Trubisky to the Chicago Bears. Sorry, Dave. Out of nowhere comes Patrick Mahomes. Not that he wasn't a name, but he was in that Texas Tech high-powered offense. He wasn't really as well known nationally on the college stage, more so because Texas Tech wasn't really in the running for anything.
Yeah, and there were, and in understanding, there really wasn't like there is right now over the last 2 years in particular. I think kind of starting with what the Rams did, there was not a concerted effort and a belief that it could be continuously done in the pros to run some of these college somewhat gimmicky but really more spread RPO kind of offenses in the NFL and make them effective. That obviously, that narrative has changed because of guys like this over the last couple of years.
Isn't it funny, though? You see those offenses under the young, like Sean McVay's and all this, but who's Mahomes' coach?
Andy.
Andy. That guy knows
the
how
walrus.
to adapt. He was an Eagles coach, but he's a great coach. Okay, so I continue my narrative, okay? So then after that, Deshaun gets taken in the teens.
No, 12.
12. Okay, just
Mahomes
off
was
the
10.
Yep. And then at the end of the draft,
Number 29, I believe.
the Baltimore Ravens take Lamar Jackson. And I'll tell you this right now. Number one, not just because I'm a Clemson fan. I mean, Deshaun's a gamer. He played against the best defenses he could possibly play against in college. His body of work should have meant more than it did to where he was drafted. No matter. I think he's where he needs to be, actually. And I said that to my kids. Were big fans. Why is he drafted? Because he's where he needs to be. Number two, Lamar Jackson at the end of the draft. I said, oh, my God, that is going to be the biggest steal of the draft. I said, Self, how does this guy? Because then I quickly had that flash, that TV screen in my head of my live view of Lamar Jackson in Clemson. And the guy, I mean, he could use a little on the accuracy. He had the cannon. He's slippery. He makes good decisions on how to use his legs and when to use his arms. Not always, but he made pretty good. He's tall. Okay, everybody's comparing him to Michael Vick. Difference is he's tall. That makes a lot for a quarterback in the NFL to be able to see the field better when you could see over a lot of stuff. And having him be mobile and tall and have an arm, strong enough arm. And at the end of the Clemson game, the post-game interviews, our defense, because there might have been a backdoor way in for Louisville to get in the playoffs.
Yep.
And our defensive guys said, I don't want any more of that. I don't want to see him again. We played Alabama the year before. I don't want to see him again. Not Lamar Jackson. Because there were times where we had him covered, and all of a sudden, the wet noodle gets through. So now, the matchup rekindled. And again, Deshaun's a gamer no matter what, but when he faces a good quarterback, like the GOAT or a Mahomes, he likes to get up and perform. And this is a great one. These guys just getting back together in the NFL. It's like Lamar won the Heisman, so I won it. You didn't win it the year before, and you're not in this year. And here's Deshaun that might say, well, I won the national title. So who's got the motivation more? Like, what chip are you going to use?
Yeah, it was, let's just say it outright as we talk about this game, that this wasn't a good game. It didn't end up being.
Not for Deshaun or the
that,
Texans.
That's a lot. That's a lot of buildup.
I know it was, but
rightfully
but
so.
that's
Again,
why
there's a lot of talent.
this was an important game this weekend. I was
look, everybody was fueled to
more
see it.
than just what was going on in the field. There's a lot of backstories to what's going on.
No,
here.
absolutely. No, I mean, rightfully, like all of what you're talking about is kind of all of what probably made this game disappointing in the end. There was this setup. There is a lot of storylines in it.
Yep.
And there are two guys that are emerging talents that are, like, let's just say it flat out, they're changing the game. And the question's going to be, can they change the game permanently? Is this for a few years? We're going to see. Here, from a game perspective, here's what this came down to me. And I got to say, I've been talking up guys like Frank Reich as one of the best coaches in the NFL, as an example.
You have.
And Sean Payton for what he's done managing that. I got to tell you, John Harbaugh is really, really, really showing me something here. We've talked about how when they drafted him. Now, understand, there's a lot of people still, when they drafted him at the back of the round, are like, what are they going to do with him? Are they going to make him a gimmick? Are they going to run like Wildcat with him? Are they going to make him a receiver?
They started to while Flacco was there.
Yeah, there was this
gimmicky
talk.
at first.
There was this talk, but one of the things that came out this year, and I think kind of just showing this guy evolve, is that Harbaugh went, listen, we are going to have to change our entire offense if we draft this guy. That was a discussion before they did.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a guy we think we can build on, I think they probably had an idea that Flacco was certainly getting near the end, certainly at least with them. And so, I believe they really made this decision. And understand something. Look, if you come out of college, I won't say Trubisky deserved to get drafted where he was at. So I'm going to keep him out of the picture. And clearly he is the worst of the four quarterbacks by a country mile. Which is obviously disappointing for me as a Bears fan, but disappointing in the NFL when you draft a guy that high. But let me just say this. There were, and I think they were legitimate questions about all three of the remaining high-level quarterbacks that came out. While Deshaun Watson, you cannot question his ability to be a gamer. The challenge was going to be, number one, he was not always the most accurate passer on some of the easier routes. But if you needed a guy to put a ball somewhere when the game was on the line, that was the guy. I mean, there's just no way. You can argue every point about his accuracy all you want. With some of the he missed some he should have had him throws through college that you'd be like, But again, that's because you're in a hypercritical situation of trying to pick a guy that's going to lead your future. So, those were some of the things that came out. The other big part was, is he just really good because he's playing with all this high-level talent around him? Obviously, that was debunked. Then you go to Mahomes, and again, we went through that gimmick offense. Obviously, the guy had as big a cannon as anybody coming out. The guy just throws bullets, but what's been more impressive about him, I think, as he's gotten in the NFL, is he can make all the other special throws. And I'm not just talking about all the sidearm stuff. It's the fact that a guy with an arm that big, like I look at Jay Cutler, not the greatest touch quarterback, but he had a rifle arm. Even Josh Allen. Josh Allen's asset to his game is not his, floating passes. Like, that's just not who he is.
No.
And you got to accept that. Mahomes has shown that he can make every throw. So all of a sudden, these guys are proving
touch,
it.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, I would tell you,
Here's
put in a lot of other offenses.
Before you dive into Lamar, you just said about Deshaun, the cast in college. I mean, now fast forward to Kansas City in the NFL, the cast he has there. They were talking about it in the game last night. Is this the best wide receiver group? When you got Tyreek Hill, you got Sammy Watkins, you got Kelsey,
Hardman.
now you got Hardman. Listen, man, and I love Sammy. His career is becoming, he's starting to go on the up. I thought it might have been going. It's on the up and up, and that's because of Mahomes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
okay. So it's like, now he's made them better rather than taking advantage of a good cast.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's still, no, that's true. And there's still a lot of talent. And Lamar Jackson, listen, his accuracy has greatly improved, but I think it's been a product of being able to utilize him in a way in the running game that allows him, you talk about his height. I also think when you have to spread defenses out to cover so much more of the field because of his ability to run, it opens up the vision for the field and it opens up plays. and his
And
accuracy
it's all
has
off
gotten-
the RPO game.
Yeah, yeah.
Or a read option, whether they call a run or whether they call a run pass.
Yeah,
And he's, again, his decision making, I feel like maybe they're making it easy for him, but his decision making's been good. And they've been, they're going old school. They run a 3 tight end set.
Yep.
Like people in fantasy football that love Marquise Brown, high upside, but the floor is low because he's only seeing the field maybe 40% of the snaps, somewhere between 40 and 60%. And he's their number one wideout. And then they got Willie Snead. It's because they're running 3 tight ends out there.
Yeah, and I listen, the NFL used to be about if you had a Walter Payton or an Emmitt Smith or someone like that in the backfield, you used to just be able to impose your will. In the NFL now, it's all about matchups. That's why all of a sudden you see these Tyreek Hill guys that are lightning fast and little, and then you see Travis Kelce, who is incredibly fast for his body size, and creates mismatches there. Lamar Jackson adds that same mismatch, and I will say in this game, and I want to stick with the game too because we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but Lamar Jackson showed up big time in this game.
Roll through some stats on both sides.
But I will say what they did is they did it as a team. So some interesting things offensively you'll see. Gus Edwards, big run, but still had a good day. He's only 8 carries, had 112 yards. He did have a 63-yard run, but that leaves a pretty good amount of yards left to spread over 7 carries, scored a touchdown. Lamar Jackson, 9 of 86. This is the problem with Lamar Jackson is when he runs, good quarterbacks that run in the NFL, I'll use an Aaron Rodgers, who typically is known as a pretty good runner, not a running quarterback, but when he runs, he hurts you bad. He'll get a first down. Lamar Jackson doesn't get a first down. He gets you 25 yards.
Yeah, it's not just picking up the first down. He'll be.
Yeah.
His legs are so long that it's like 2 more. Once he's in stride, it's like 2 more strides. He's got an extra 10.
Most quarterbacks that can run roll out and then look for the first down marker and run an angle to hit that first down marker.
Dude, he can
Lamar
do that.
Jackson is just it's
Which is
reminiscent
one of my
Michael Vick's
fears for him because somebody's going to get a late hit out of bounds because he'll go look like he's going out and then kind of stay in bounds and try for that extra 5-10 yards. Somebody's going to nail him out of bounds, get hit with a call. You could get hurt.
That's why I was not a believer in him because I was afraid he was going to take
I don't
punishment.
think he's going to take it on the field as much as a play like that where he's going out of bounds.
Right, but I've noticed he really doesn't because think about this. When you're a quarterback running for the sticks, and if someone's chasing you and close to you and you're running for the sticks, you have to expose yourself. When this guy's running 6-7 yards, 12 yards past the sticks, he doesn't need to try to get that extra little bit. So he is.
I'm just saying when he's running for this, if it's a first down, like you said, and most quarterbacks take an angle, he'll take an angle the same sometimes, and then right when he crosses that first down, not go out of bounds. He'll scamper for a couple extra.
But if you watch him, I have to say,
That's where I'm worried about
pretty
it.
extensively with him because it is my fear. I really feel like, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not out of the woods with this. We have coordinated people as awesome way too quickly.
Yeah.
Defenses figure guys out.
I think Mahomes is having a less than spectacular year.
Yeah, they're figuring him out. And Deshaun Watson is having some challenges. Now, I think there's other pieces to the puzzle for both of those guys, but it's a reality. They're taking away parts of their game that they're most comfortable with, and that's what the NFL defense is all about. So anyway, Lamar Jackson, I think, can he continue to protect himself? Does he get greedy with some of the running, which exposes him to shots? He's not a big guy, and he's the kind of guy that can get hit. And here's the problem is if you define this game, now his shelf life shrinks with this running game if he doesn't continue to develop as a passer from an accuracy standpoint. He has been pretty efficient, but he also has not had to throw in as tight of windows because he opens that field up so much. Eventually, you get a little older, you get a little bit slower. The new players coming in get a little younger, get a little faster. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But let me just say, this guy, they developed an offense for him. This is why Baltimore blew him up. But I'm going to tell you, I want to talk about the other side of the football. This Baltimore defense was nothing like any Baltimore defense we had seen early on in this year.
Yep.
Nothing like what we had seen. I want to talk about the resurgence of that defense, and in particular, Marcus Peters, who kind of was a throwaway for the Rams.
It's the same situation as we have with Minka.
Yeah, and he has played some really good ball. They've gotten Jimmy Smith back. They've gotten a little healthier. Their pass rush Judon, whoop, he was
everywhere
in that game. 7 sacks, which we already knew was a problem that could rear its head with Houston at any given point with their offensive line. They got it done on them. They shut down the run, and they kept everything in front of them. I got to say, the defense really set the stage for this game, because in a game where we thought they would have to go blow for blow, all of a sudden early on the defense allowed them to get ahead enough where now all of a sudden the whole complexion of the game changed. And look, I think Lamar Jackson has just taken a pretty significant lead in the at least from a guy like Deshaun Watson. I think Russell Wilson's still there, but stats are starting to pile up for Lamar in the MVP race. I think this is just one of those games where the deficiencies of what goes on with Houston is a problem. So this game was the best game for me that I wanted to watch. It didn't live up to the hype, unfortunately. Overall. But one, I think no less of what Deshaun Watson can do, and I'm just more and more becoming more impressed with Baltimore on multiple levels, from their coaching, adapting to this player and letting him be good, to their defense resurging and becoming much stronger, and then finally Lamar Jackson getting to do that. I mean, this has kind of been the problem with the NFL for a long time. There's all this talk about black quarterbacks and that. I don't think it was that. I think, and maybe it was, but I guess I don't want to totally put my head in the sand. But the bigger thing is the NFL, think about it, used to be you needed to fit this small box as a pocket passer. No running. We don't want you getting hurt. You got to have a big arm. You got to do all this stuff. And they made it this like tiny little box. And if you didn't fall in this box, that's why we only had 3 or 4 great quarterbacks every year. Now they're saying, wait a minute, why don't we just go with what we got? And if this kid can do X and they can't stop it, so be it. So
they're doing a good job.
That's a lot about it. I like that evolving coach mentality. That's a reason why I liked what Frank Reich did. He rolled with the punches. I like what Sean Payton did. He rolled with the punches. And
again, not punches. Sean McVay, not these young coaches.
No,
it's
not Nagy.
It's the old school coaches adapting. So final score: Baltimore 41, Houston Texans 7. And Baltimore goes to 8-2. Houston goes to 6-4. Next week, Houston will travel or goes home, and they get the Colts. So they're right neck and neck in the division with them losing and the Colts winning. And they lost to the Colts in the first meeting in Indy. So this is important that they get this for at least the split, right? And from the other side of the ball, Baltimore. Will they have a bye next week, or what do they got? They got the Rams. They got the Rams in L.A. Monday night, so that should be easy.
Might be the only game where it actually sounds like a Rams hometown crowd, just because Baltimore's a relatively new franchise.
Yep. Okay, so the next game was the New England Patriots sitting at 8-1, traveled to the Philadelphia Eagles they were at 5-4. Battling for supremacy in the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys. And, the things that we've seen all year have been the bugaboo for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball. Jordan Howard didn't play this game. Deshaun Jackson's out for a year. Alshon Jeffrey was banged up. And on the defensive side of the ball, look, they got a great front. Fletcher Cox is a madman, but the back end of that defense, that secondary, can be had. And from a Patriots standpoint, great defense. They're coming off a bye. Lights out. Started to see some chinks in the armor in terms of them giving up yards on the ground to opposing offenses. But other than that, pretty great. And then the offense for New England has been, it's been getting it done. And I don't say that emphatically because they're not blowing people out. And when they got into a game with a team like Baltimore, they couldn't keep up. And, Brady's still the GOAT. There is a little bit of that spicy mustard turning to yellow mustard on the old hot dog.
I got tucked into that last year.
But
didn't work
it's
out.
Still Tom Brady, and you also got to understand they are dealing with a whole bunch of issues on their side of the ball. Josh Gordon's gone. They brought Mohamed Sanu in. You got
N'Keal Henry coming in.
N'Keal Harry. You got Edelman, who always plays but sits there every week with a questionable tag because he's banged up. You got Their backfield has really not been that great. Sonny Michel really hasn't done a whole hell of a lot this year. Been able to be leaned on, but a whole bunch of different players, or Jacoby Myers or Philip Dorsett's coming in. Gronk's gone, and it's kind of ho-hum, but they're getting it done, like I said. Final score: Patriots 17, Philadelphia Eagles 10. It was 10-0 Philly to start this game. And then New England started to make their march, and Philly didn't score again.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, their defense continues, New England's, to be strong. I'm sorry, I got had last year on the whole Tom Brady's declining. Look, the fact is, if there's ever I've seen a team that kind of just skates through the regular season in order to blow it up in the playoffs, it's the Patriots. Here's the real thing to me. The most important thing to me, to the New England Patriots, in order to repeat as Super Bowl champions, is home field advantage. And that's because the one team that can get at them is Baltimore, and Baltimore is right on their heels with home field advantage. I think if that game's in Foxborough, and it's the playoffs, I believe it's just a different story. What's interesting to me is, we talk about all these quarterbacks that are kind of changing the game. Carson Wentz, was expected to be I'm not going to put him in the Lamar Jackson category, but definitely a bigger, more athletic quarterback, a big arm. Something kind of interest that, when you really look at it, is what is he becoming? And I look back and I'm like, man, this guy is just a 175 yards to 225 kind of guy. And I was like, well, am I being fair to him? So I wanted to make sure I went back and look at the stats. Only 2 times this season has Carson Wentz surpassed 300 yards. Even more amazing is only 3 times, which already includes the 2 I just spoke of, has he gone over 250. His passing output has been very vanilla this year. His ratings are okay. Certainly not MVP, I think, level, and definitely, and also not, even really Pro Bowl level. So, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this plays out with Philadelphia. They've been terribly inconsistent. I think this Patriots team just kind of shows they're not ready for the big fight. They can beat up on some of the crappy teams, and not so much on the others. So this is a Philadelphia team I think is getting close to that death rattle at the end of the year. I don't know that they can catch Dallas. So just kind of interesting to see. We're going to see how this one plays out. But the Patriots just keep winning, and if they keep first place and get that bye, playoffs are a whole different animal for this team. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right. So again, final score: Patriots 17. Eagles 10. Patriots go to 9-1. Eagles go to 5-5. The Pats, who they got on the horizon? They got the Cowboys at home. That's right, Cowboys. So back-to-back NFC East opponents. The Eagles have they have the Seahawks at home. That's going to be a tough one. Russ Wilson. So, all right. That runs through really the 3 main games. I thought I had KC. You just left that one out of there.
Yeah, I mean, Rivers.
Yeah, that's really what to talk about. Monday Night Football. Kansas City beats the Chargers in Mexico City 24-17. Rivers really was the one that lost that game from the Chargers. I hate to say it. There really is nothing else to it.
Well, that one, I guess a note is that Tyreek Hill got hurt again, so we have to look and see how that plays out. And
Damian Williams also got hurt, the running back. So we do have 3 games we want to just quickly zip through as honorable mention. The first of the 3 games, we've got NFC South battles as the Atlanta Falcons, who sit at 2-7, traveled to the 5-4 Carolina Panthers, fighting for maybe still a chance at the division with the Saints, and also fighting for an opportunity at a wild card. And I just want to touch on this game because the past 2 weeks, the Falcons travel to New Orleans and blow them out, and this is after their bye. Now they travel to Carolina and blow them out 29-3. Kyle Allen, the quarterback for the Panthers, threw the ball 50 times. 31 of 50, 325 yards. You know how many TDs?
0, I thought. Right?
That's right. You know how many
Was he like
picks?
3?
4.
4. Yeah, that's
Christian
that's scary thought.
McCaffrey did his thing. 14 for 70 on the ground, no TDs. 11 receptions for 121 yards, no TDs. So credit the Atlanta defense for they bent but didn't break in terms of letting him in the end
And he's
zone.
just one of those guys you are going to have to accept the bend and not break because he's going to get some. That guy's, he may not get the MVP looks because it's just a quarterback-driven thing, and there's some great quarterback play, but, man, he's special.
Yeah. I mean, if there were, we'll talk about that MVPs later, but he'd probably be the closest to the top 2.
Yeah, the question becomes, I think there's 2 questions that come out of this game. One, this Falcons defense has had a pretty impressive upstart. There's no real trigger to this that we can figure out. It's not like they got somebody big back.
Same guys.
Yeah, they're putting it together.
I know McKinley got a little banged up in this game, but I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, so...
And, they came out of the bye, and they're on fire. But here's the thing. We had talked about this in other casts in terms of salary cap space. They are screwed.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to deal with some guys. And, so what are they going to do? Grady Jarrett will be coming up. He's kind of been the linchpin for that defense. And if they're playing well now, he's playing really well. So, what do you do there?
Yeah. They got a lot of decisions.
And then the other thing is where are they going here with this? It's a little, it's like too little too late. It really is at this point. They're really not going to be able to certainly make a run at the division, but it's going to be very, even they ran the table. I don't know if they're going to be able to slip into a wild card or not. And then what's it worth? So that leads me to say, especially a lot of Falcon fans in town here, because we are in Atlanta, we're going to end up keeping Dan Quinn, or, we're screwing up our draft pick position.
Yeah, this is an ugly scenario for the Falcons. Unfortunately, winning is actually not going to cure the problems that they have because they're pretty deep. They're deep. They have bigger problems than most of the other garbage teams. And on the other end, the Panthers, does this whole idea of getting rid of Cam Newton, I said to Kyle Allen, Kyle Allen hadn't thrown any picks and then had that terrible game 3 weeks ago where he threw 3 picks. 3 weeks ago. Then he came back last week or the week before last and cleaned it up the game a little bit. So it was like, all right, well maybe that was just a flat, just a bad game. But then he goes and has an even bigger stinker this week. So now do you start questioning what you're doing with Carolina?
Yeah, that ship may not quite have left the dock yet on getting rid of Cam Newton.
Both teams ended up with some ugly questions to head into the next week and beyond.
Yep.
Plus, now the Falcons, who most people thought was going to be a shot to have an easy game, maybe not so much.
Yep. So the next honorable mention we wanted to touch on, again, an NFC South game, the New Orleans Saints coming off a bad loss at home to Atlanta off of a bye, both of them, and they sit at 7-2 and travel to Tampa Bay, who is 3-6, and got the ship right. And it was a little more of the Jameis Winston on the bad side that we're used to seeing. They definitely, though Tampa Bay has a really good run-stopping defense. They got rid of Vernon Hargraves. They're just the rolling guys in and out in that secondary.
Yep.
It's not good. It was a great way for Drew Brees to get right. But I say all that to say, there was a focus on Alvin Kamara, who went 13 of 75 on the ground, didn't score there. Went 10 for 47 through the air, didn't score there. But there was a focus. Now, of course, Mr. Michael Thomas, no matter what, 8 for 114 into TD. He is something, that guy. He is, right now, I think, the best receiver in the league.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this division as a whole is besides the Saints, there could be big changes all around this division. Tampa obviously included in that. Their quarterback situation, struggle still in the pass defense. And, what are they going to do there? It's just going to be interesting. The Saints right now are going to they really got to get it running because they want to get that early bye, and, that loss last week set them back. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But the NFC South is going to be a crazy, crazy offseason for 3 of these 4 teams, I think. So moving on, we had the last game, which was the Cardinals going to take on the 49ers. 49ers coming off their first defeat of the season to the Seahawks. In a pretty crazy game. Russell Wilson obviously putting himself square in the center of the MVP race himself. But a Cardinals team that 2 weeks prior had given San Francisco quite a bit to think about in a game where everybody thought they would just crush them.
And they gave them more to think about here.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting to see this Arizona team again left for dead, but really kind of crawled out of that. What are they? 3-1 start. Really starting to look much better. And again, in this game with the Niners was, I give all the credit in a sense to the 49ers for coming back in this game and getting the job done. Garoppolo and the running game, which has been the signature for them, was not there. Garoppolo did get 4 touchdowns, threw for a lot of yards, but did throw 2 picks in this game. So his turnover issues are still there, and those become a hell of a lot more pronounced in the playoffs. And this is a team that may not win their division. I think they are a playoff team, but their schedule gets rough the rest of the season.
Game of the year is with the Seahawks, who are right behind them.
Yeah, but I mean, they get Green Bay this week. I think they get the Ravens after that. Then they get the Saints. I mean, that's a brutal. That's a stretch where they legitimately could lose them all.
And like I said, they get the Seahawks last game of the year. That could be for the division. Seahawks have the head-to-head the first game in which was in San Francisco, so they'll be at home for that one.
Yeah, then they get the Falcons, which again, one of those games we thought would be an automatic loss. Probably still a loss for the Falcons, but that could be tough. They get the Rams. I'm not really feeling real. I think Rams are.
But you're right. Their schedule's tough.
Yeah, it's not easy, and you got a Seattle team that again got Russell Wilson, and they win.
Well, I mean, yeah, and look at their schedule is not as tough. I mean, Philadelphia. It is in Philly this week, so that's probably the biggest bugaboo. But other than that. I think Russell Wilson could have a day. They get the Vikings at home. Vikings are all right. They get the Rams on the road. The Panthers on the road. Could be tough because they do have to travel cross country, and if they can run, and Seahawks team, but then they get the Cardinals again, then they get the Niners. It's certainly not as daunting as what you just said for the 49ers. And if they're chomping at their bit with the head-to-head in their pocket, this is going to be that NFC West is going to. Could be the most exciting race to the playoff. Is that?
Yeah, and just understand. I mean, Minnesota's still out there that can do some damage as far as a wild card is concerned. So, I mean, we could be talking about this between the Seahawks and the Niners, who look like 2 very good teams right now. One of those teams could be the 6th place team going into the playoffs. And again, that's a tough road. That means you got 3 games all on the road in the playoffs against some very tough teams. You're going to go to some places that are not particularly great weather-wise potentially, if you have to go to like a Green Bay or something. So, again, these games are really, really starting to matter. And, we talked a little bit about the Niners. As good as they've looked, their schedule in the first half of the year ended up being built really well for them. So
they are dealing with a lot of injuries. Breida is definitely a part of that offense. He was banged up, not playing. Kittle is Garoppolo's guy. He was banged up. He wasn't playing. Emmanuel Sanders played, but he came in banged up, and obviously he didn't really do that much. He went 3 for 33. That's it. Deebo Samuel, for a couple weeks in a row, he went 8 for 134. He's been showing up a little bit. On the Cardinals side of the ball, they're just kind of doing their thing, and this seems to be the same thing every week. Like, not a tremendous stat line from Kyler Murray from a passing perspective, but efficient. He had 33 attempts and 24 completions, 2 TDs, no interceptions, but only 150 yards. And then from the ground game, he's definitely getting involved, but it's not like these eye-popping Lamar Jackson numbers, and maybe that's why, because of what Lamar's doing, it kind of overshadows Kyler. 8 for 8 carries, 67 yards, and scampering in the end zone on the ground. But it's been effective for them. I mean, they've been in games. It was 9-0 in the first quarter, Arizona in a flash. And then in the second, Arizona scored a touchdown, and San Francisco scored 10. So I mean, it was back and forth, and really all the way to the end.
Yeah, I mean, they're on what I like to see about this team is they've been on a 4-game losing streak, and yet, with the exception of the first game of that 4-game losing streak where they got beat up pretty bad by the Saints, they've been in there all the rest of the 3 games. They've lost the next 2 by a total of 6 points. And then this Niners game went down to the end. I mean, there was a touchdown at the end that kind of pushed this one over the spread, but this was a close.
Which was big talk, apparently.
Yeah.
People, that last-minute thing blew money for some
money
people.
for a lot of people. So, I mean, again, this is a team that's got some scrap to it. And understand, they were the number 1 pick in the draft, which means they were the worst team in the NFL last year with a defense that has not really – it hasn't improved personnel-wise, and it hasn't really improved statistically, and they're kind of getting it done. So they're set up to make a little bit of noise. They got to make some moves.
Yeah, if they're where they're at now, they make some moves in free agency. They end up getting a pretty decent draft pick at, they're probably going to. It'll probably be top 5, definitely top 10, but probably top 5 because now they sit at 3-7-1. Niners, by the way, 9-1. But that and adding some pieces in free agency and getting better with this offense, with the coach and with the quarterback, their trajectory could start to turn, which, this is, like I said, this is already a race probably the best race in the NFL for the playoffs, with the 2 teams at the top. And, Arizona, and mind you, the team that we're not talking about in that division is the defending NFC champs in the Rams.
Yep.
So, it could be interesting. All right, is that it? That gets them all. After I'm looking at this, it's probably just under an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop it. I'll cut up our producer John, who is hunting in Montana. We'll cut it up and get it up and out for the NFL recap week 11. And then
he's using an assault rifle.
Yeah, right. Taking out like elk. And then we'll do our favorite segment, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Have a great. See you on the gridiron.